Hi everyone, and welcome to my, let's say, review of the Mele. Although I'm going to try something a little bit different this time, and I'm actually going to kind of do a mega comparison of the Mele with a few other IEMs at its price range, below and more expensive, and in that way try and position it a little bit. There is maybe one or two IEMs that I would have also liked to include in this, but I still haven't given them the necessary listening time to be able to give them a fair comparison. So even if I have to make an addition to this video, I will do it, but I don't want to add them on here. All of the IEMs that I'm listening to, that I'm comparing it to, I've listened to them and I know them well. So I think that will give me a more unbiased, more coherent, more straightforward opinion of where the Mele stands with regards to the others. That's the first thing I wanted to actually talk about. Second thing I wanted to say is sound and listening and is all very subjective. Yes, there are ground rules for what is considered good sound, what is considered bad sound, and there's all this talk of Harman tuned and diffuse and this and that, and what at the end of the day, in my opinion, and without wanting to disrespect any of those gentlemen that came up with those let's say basis of comparison, I believe that if I put an earphone in my ear and it sounds good, it sounds good. If it doesn't sound good, I don't care what paper will say. I don't care what whatever will say. It must sound good to me, because my ears are my ears, your ears are your ears. So maybe I put these earphones in my ear and they sound amazing and fantastic and wow, and then they put it in somebody's ears and they sound like absolute garbage. And it's a very complex thing, and I think sometimes we all get caught up with graphs and what graphs say and what graphs don't say and this and that and blah blah blah. And yes, graphs are an interesting starting point for us to have an idea of what things might sound or might not sound, or what we maybe will like when we see it, because if we put an earphone on, we like it, and then we graph it and we see how it looks, then it's normal that we assume that if we see a similar graph that we will also like it. And that is not always necessarily the case. Which brings us to the Mele. Before we start, a quick run through the box. Simple. Like I mentioned a couple of days ago when I did a little kind of teaser, the box looks very similar to the box from Ohm's Electroacoustics, their HT200. The IEM itself is exactly the same, exactly, and it even graphed very similar, to be honest. So we'll leave it at that. I'm not gonna say that maybe it's Ohm's Acoustics that made the Mele, but it's a good possibility. I do know that they manufacture stuff for a few other companies, so it could be possible. Anyway, that's the box. Simple affair. Some information, nothing too dramatic there. Okay, inside it brings very nice case, good size. Earphones do fit in there, contrary to sometimes other brands. It brings, I bought the standard one, so it brings a decent standard cable. Brings some tips which are all wide bore affairs, as you can see. Okay, excuse my fingers. And then the earphones themselves. These are the ones with the black faceplate. Let me actually just zoom this in a little bit. There we go. Alright, very nice. It's an all alloy metal shell, machined, built like a tank. I mean, these things surely can take a beating. It's got two vents, one over there. Let me just show you better. So one vent over there, and then another vent on the top there, next to Hawaiian Bad Boys logo. Okay, this, as some of you might know, was something that was that had BGGAR's influence in it. He helped with the tuning, and the tuning very much reflects what he considers his personal taste in terms of sound and so on and so forth. Excuse me. So yeah, that's it. That's basically it. There was some controversy with regards to the selling price and he himself actually explained it in a video where there was some perhaps misunderstanding or whatever between himself and Tripowin, and well, they managed to solve that and launch the Mele at a very competitive, let's be honest, at a very competitive $60. At the same time, it places it amidst some tough competition. I mean, there's really some tough competition in that price range. Let me just zoom out here. Okay. Another thing I just wanted to point out is all the cables that I'm using are XINHS. I'm using a graphene balanced cable here for the Mele. I'm using a standard silver one for the Aria over here on the left hand side. Here's the Aria. This is the only one actually that I'm using a more simple cable from them, the Blon. Another HzSound HeartMirror with another XINHS cable. We then have the Yuan Li's over there, the Hana 2021, and on the corner over here the XINHS with the silver cable. So all the cables here are all XINHS. Love their products. The cables are really nice, good quality. I mean, the braiding, everything. Let me just show you quickly here the graphene one. I mean, this thing is something else. Let me try to zoom it in here. It's you know, perfect braiding. Come on, zoom. No, you don't feel like it? Well, having a bit of a hard time. Anyway, very nice cable, the accessories, everything, all top notch. Let's go on to what we want to know is, what does it sound like? Well, let me start by saying that the signature here, in my opinion, is yes, very much a Harman kind of signature, but a few things here, or well, maybe in my set or whatever, were perhaps not 100% what was intended. I'm not sure really. I find the bass to be a little bit overemphasized at times, and I find that it lacks some sparkle up top. Okay, so it, it's a Harman tuned, in my opinion, but with those nuances. It's warmish in the bass and has some it could do with a little bit more sparkle. Okay, and there are a few other ones here which also Harman tuned, the XINHS, the Hana, the Yuan Li to a certain extent also. So they all follow a very similar tuning pattern. The HzSound are the only ones here that did not have that. They are kind of a neutral bright, so very neutral kind of bass with a very, well, not very, but with a bright mids, upper mids and highs. So, but the rest are all, let's say, kind of Harman tuned variations. Okay. As I was saying, bass on here is very good. His bass is really good. It's textured, it's got speed. It is a pleasure. It really is a pleasure. It has the right amount to give male vocals that warmth that it needs. It doesn't interfere with the female vocals, in my opinion. And overall, yes, it's fine. It's not its downfall. Let's put it that way. I know it's a strong word, but I'm going to put it that way. I'll try and compare the bass straight away with all of them. With the Arias, the bass is not as pronounced, but it is of the same quality, the bass of the Aria, as the bass of the Mele. But because the Aria is got more upper mid range and the high trebles, it's got more there, it's got more highs up there. The overall balance that you get out of the Aria is better than the than the Mele. So although it has less bass quantity, the quantity that it has matches up better with the rest of the spectrum. Onto the blondes. The blondes are more boomy than the bass on the Mele. So yes, the Mele has a better bass. Quantity is about the same. But even in the quality of the bass, and again, this is very much ear dependent and tip dependent, and you will see here that I'm actually using foams while I'm using silicones on there. I don't think that the increase in quality is that dramatic. I find the bass to be quicker, yes, on the Mele, but on certain songs the blonde actually does better. So it's not outright correct to say that it's an inferior bass. It's just more boomy, and overall, yes, the Mele is superior. With the HeartMirror, and I want to just bring your attention to a certain detail here. On the standard HeartMirror, the quality of the bass is amazing. It's very good. What it lacks is quantity, and the quantity that does exist is just barely enough to match with the rest of the spectrum, because in terms of details, vocals, upper mid-range, high, the highs, on the HD, tremendous. So the lack of bass on here can sometimes not bring out the full potential of the HeartMirror. These HeartMirrors that I have here are the ones that have been modified by me, tuned to have more bass quantity without losing any of the quality. And in this format, the bass in the HzSound is, in my opinion, as good, if not maybe sometimes superior to the Mele, in the way that it is here. Yuan Li. For me, the bass on the Yuan Li is better. Point blank. No need to elaborate too much. It's just better. It's more polished. Let's put it that way. Okay. The Hana 2021. Same thing goes for the Hana 2021. It's just got a more polished overall. The overall quality is superior on the Hana. And with regards to the oxygen, the only thing that the bass on the oxygen loses out to the Mele is in the quantity. It's got a little bit less quantity, especially in the sub bass. Otherwise, the quality of the bass of the oxygen, far superior, far superior. On to the mids. Mids, males, female vocals, amazing. I really can't fault it. I mean, we're talking $60, so come on, let's be fair. Mids are fine, instruments are fine, guitars, everything on here when it comes to mids is more than fine. It really is good. Where do you start seeing maybe it's again, not downfall, because that's not the correct word to use, but where do you see that it maybe is lacking? You see that it maybe is lacking is when you start comparing it. And when you start comparing it, you start seeing, okay. And again, I'll run through my little take here. The mids on the Aria are, well, do they really need too much presentation? Amazing. Vocals, the detail that you have in here is just unreal. The Aria is not one of the best sub $100 IEMs for the sake of just being. It wasn't just somebody woke up one day and just said, okay. No, it is justified. It is really good. Sometimes it can sound a little bit more clinical as compared to the Mele. So the Mele can have that little bit extra warmth compared to the blondes. It's a term that I sometimes like to use, and I don't want to use it in the wrong way or be misinterpreted. The mids in the blondes are old school mids, and what I mean by old school, they've got this lushness about them. They've got this thing that it's difficult to sometimes actually quantify or explain, or at least I don't know how to do it. It just sounds good. They just have this nice tonality, let's put it that way. The timbre on the mids here is just very, very nice. The Mele takes lessons from that and does exactly the same thing. So I would say the mids here are again very matched, very matched. Not a clear winner, let's put it that way. Okay, mids on the HzSound, again very much like the mids on the Aria, very detailed, amazing. I mean, really something else. Can be sometimes just over 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 clinical, over I don't even they just can sound sometimes cold, let's put it that way. Okay, that's the thing. So the Mele here is perhaps superior to the mids on here, because in the standard format of the HzSound, like I said, not having the amount of bass that it needs, sometimes it makes the mid sound cold. On the modified one, which is the one that I have here, that doesn't happen. On the modified one, the mids here will be superior to the mids on the Mele. But if I have to talk about the standard HzSound, the mids by themselves are superior, yes, but because mids don't come alone, they need the bass to actually also fill them out nicely and give that little extra that's needed. They will sound less appealing than the mids on the Mele. Okay, mids on the Yuan Li, very nice. Again, well tuned. Take note that this is the second version, well, the retuned version. This is not the one that came out for people to evaluate initially. So like, let's say the beta version, this is the final tuning, and the mids here are spectacular. However, there's just a little bit extra on the Mele that make the Mele have just slightly better mids than the Yuan Li. Mids on the Hana, no contest, better in every way, period. I mean, what can I say? That's just my opinion. And the same thing goes for the mids on the Oxygen. I mean, the Oxygen is here. This is this is $280. It's here basically because this, in my opinion, is the reference for a single DD below, let's say, $500. There's some very nice other single DDs, but they just enter a price range which I think is just not fair to compare them with. But this is the reference, and it's able to compete with IMs way more expensive. It's able to compete with IMs which are hybrids, and give them all and beat a lot of very good IMs. I mean, it's not hype. The Oxygen is really something special. It is genuinely something special. I mean, I own two of them. Okay, fine, I know I've got this problem, but I own two of them because that's how much I like it. This is a reference. Okay, highs, and that's where now we encounter the problem here with the Mele, in my opinion. Highs here are sufficient. There was talk of a 10k peak that would make things sound harsh and this and that. In my opinion, and with what I hear and so on and so forth, I couldn't get any of that. I'm using foam tips, fair enough. So some might say, because you're using the foam tips, you've toned down some harshness that could exist. Perhaps, yeah, perhaps, but this is how they sound good for me, so this is how I listen to them. And every one of the tips that are here on these headphones, on these earphones, sorry, are the tips that worked best for me with my ears and with the music that I heard. So in this configuration, the highs here are spectacular and far superior to the Mele. Mids here on the Blon, they might not be the most polished, but they are present, and because they are present, they are superior to the Mele, period. They have that sparkle that enables reproduction of music to just be that extra little bit engaging, which unfortunately you do not find you do not have in the Mele. So that little bit extra that little bit extra zing that you need, a little bit touch on the cymbals up, and it's just better here in the Blon, period. It might not be the perfect treble, but it's better. HzSound needs no, I don't think it really needs me to elaborate too much. The highs here are spectacular. Highs on the Yuan Li, although not its strong point, because I think the tuning that was tried to be implemented here in the Yuan Li was very good bass, very good mids, slightly behind the bass, and then the treble slightly behind the mids, obviously slightly behind the bass. So the highs are sufficient for the overall package and present in way more quantity than in the Mele. So again, superior to the Mele. As for the Hana and Oxygen, well, I guess you guys already know what I'm going to say. They are present and superior. And for me, the best highs here are the Oxygen and the Hana. Very good. The highs on the Yuan Li are very good, very smooth. You don't feel any harshness, no sibilance, nothing. On the HzSound, some sibilance on some stuff. The Blon, yes, there is some sibilance, definitely, but they are present, while on the Mele they are not, so they weren't based on that, period. And the highs here on the Aria as well, the same situation. Okay, some of you might say, oh, but we can correct the lack of the highs with some EQ. Fine, yes, of course you can. I mean, fair enough. The same thing with the same way you can correct that. I corrected mechanically the lack of bass quantity on the HzSound. That is true. I'm trying to give an idea of how they are all in standard format. Okay, and again, I would just want to make a point of saying this. Although I used this modified HzSound, I have another set, I have a few other sets which are standard, which I also listened to them to compare, and the difference between this one and the rest is just the bass quantity here. So when I talk about highs here being good, I'm talking about the highs being good on this modified one, and they are the same quality as the highs on the unmodified HzSound. So the comparison is fair in my opinion. Okay. Just a quick recap. So, bass on the Mele is a very good bass, and it doesn't beat everybody. It stands hand to hand with a lot of them. Some better, some worse, but that's what it is. Mids, same situation. It gets beaten by some, loses out to others, but again, overall the differences are not dramatic. In the highs, that's where it does get beaten, and period, that's it. It just loses out. On to the technicalities, so soundstage, imaging, detailed retrieval, and so on and so forth. They're all very good. It's got a wide enough soundstage. I don't find it's the deepest, but wide enough. It's got good imaging. You can differentiate stuff and so on. The detailed retrieval is where I think it just loses out because of the lack of that little bit extra energy up top. It just needs a little bit extra energy, just a little bit more. That's all I'm saying, just a little bit more. And I think, honestly, I think it's something that can be solved. I think it can, because if TForce was able to assess that on the Yuan Li and make sure that the production version came out perfect, then I'm sure that Tripowin, along with who manufactured these, they can correct this, and there can be a second version coming out which is corrected, which is better, has taken care of that. Well, they can if they want, obviously. How does it compare to the rest here? Well, imaging here is spectacular, and soundstage as well. Same thing goes for the Hana. Same thing goes for the Yuan Li, but to a lesser level than the TANCHJIMs, let's put it that way. soundstage here is wide enough, not very deep. Imaging and detailed retrieval is something really unreal. The Blon's soundstage, it's acceptable. It's nothing spectacular. Imaging, surprisingly, it's actually quite good. Detailed retrieval, it's fine. If it wasn't for the fact that sometimes there's some harshness in the upper mids and some sibilance, it would be better. And on the Arias, again, very, very good. So overall, I mean, this is a really good IM, period. It is an IM like many others that has its flaws and its strong points. To say that it gets absolutely destroyed by the others is not fair. Yes, it does get beaten. The oxygen here it just beats it, period. That's it. The Hana is also a superior IM, period. Okay, but this is $280. This is $170. So with regards to the price, it pushes them out of, let's say, a more close battle. In terms of a more close battle, we have the Yuan Li, HzSound, the Blonds, which they still exist, and and the Arias. So we're talking $65 to $75. Yeah, $30 for this, $50 for this, and about $110 for the Yuan Lis, 60 for the Mele's. How does it feather against these four? Well, I don't think it's a huge improvement over the Blondes. I don't. I think the Blondes have marked their place very well with regards to where they are and what they have been able to achieve for Chi-Fi. I think that they really changed the game a lot. And if we are now living in a period of IEMs that cost $150 and are as good as IEMs of $500, $600, $700 just a few years ago, that's for a reason. And I think to a certain extent that reason comes down to this gentleman over here. So call it luck, call it well planned. I don't really care. The reality is that the Blon is a special IEM. And I think sometimes some manufacturers get caught on wanting to beat the Blon, and while they should just be worried about making an earphone that sounds good. And if the Blon is a reference to them, fine. But you know, it's like, oh no, the Blon killer and this and that. It's not a Blon killer. In my opinion, the Mele is superior in certain aspects, but it's not a Blon killer. With regards to the HzSound, yes, I would say that perhaps for those that are not fans of all that detail, or not treble heads like we usually call them, yes, I would say that the Mele is superior to the HzSound. For me, no, it isn't. Especially not in the modified version. In the modified version, the HzSound is superior to the Mele. Which leaves us the Aria and the Yuan Li. If you recall, I mentioned, or I said that the Yuan Li was the poor man's version of the Hana 2021, sorry, and I stand by that. It is an alternative to who cannot afford the oxygen and the Hana. This is the next best thing to buy, and compared to the Mele, it is superior to the Mele. So, you know, the extra $40, $50 involved, I think are justified. Really, I think it's justified. From the overall packaging and accessories that come with it, the cable that it brings in standard format, the overall construction, everything, I firmly am of the opinion that this is a superior IM to the Mele. Which then finally leaves us with the Aria. And if you ask me which is the two is more balanced, which is more coherent in terms of sound, definitely the Aria. The Aria is the more complete IM. It has everything, and whatever it lacks in terms of bass quantity, not quality, it makes up for that little bit extra sparkle and zing that it has up top. And the vocals, which are amazing, the details which are good, the capabilities of imaging, detail retrieval, everything are superior. So I personally, if I was to choose, I would go for the Aria. In no way, and I want to make this perfectly clear, in no way am I detracting anything from the Mele. The Mele are a very, very nice IEM, which I think was maybe victim to, I'm not going to say a rush launch, but to not actually having seen 100% what it was like. And I believe that if they maybe had sent out a few items to a few people of reputable reputation, well, that doesn't sound like really good English, but anyway, you understand what I'm saying. I'm sure that they would have detected this little issue that it has with regards to the upper end of the Mele, and they would have corrected it, and we would now be seeing a superior IEM. And even if that meant that instead of having done this really good price, because I mean $60, even if that meant that this was to cost $70 or $75 or $80, I think it would still be a tremendous value. It is a well constructed IEM. It was well tuned. You can see time was spent with making sure that the details were done properly, and it is just really a pity that just that little flaw there is present. Anyway, this has been a very long review, the longest I've actually ever done, I think. But I was so enthusiastic about listening to this, and I just wanted to put it out there and have you guys hear what I had to say about the Mele and how it compares to the Aria, the Blon 03, the HzSound, the Yuan Li's, the TANCHJIM 2021, and the Oxygen. So it's been an interesting battle here of single DDs. I have a FD3, which is actually over here, which was the one I would have liked to have included in here as well. And I also have wanted to include the Venturi Electronics, but I want to give those two more listening time. I know I've reviewed the Venturi Electronics, but I have since been playing around more with some tip rolling, and the results have been quite interesting. I maintain what I said about that particular IM, which is it's a bass monster. It is, but once I have listened to them a little bit better, I will definitely be adding on to this mega comparison, and help people have a better idea of where things stand. I will be putting up, along with the review as well, the list of the music that I listen to, just for the sake of, if some of you have got these IEMs, you can actually hear the same song and then compare and see what I mean. And yeah, that's basically it. All right, thank you. Take care. Bye bye.